We're going to do it live, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday. It is the time for the Mattriarchy. I am, as per usual, your host, and today's one and only Matt Reese, coming to you from a basement in Nebraska, and I'm joined by a number one Marmaduke fan.
I'm the one responsible for all this.
This is true. But a couple of years ago, you said, "Hey, have you ever read Tales Gets Trolled?" And I said, "Oh, Taylor says link." I sent the link. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I sent the wrong thing. Should I copy that? Let's see here. Sorry, everybody out there watching. I may have screwed up, and one of our guests is wondering why he can't get on. That may be what's going on here.
I'll go ahead and send out links too.
Yeah. No, it didn't. It didn't send. What the heck? It told me that it sent, but it looks like it didn't actually send. Force paste. Oh my goodness sakes. Nope. Copy. Oh my goodness. Worst show on the internet.
Most least professional, best show on the internet.
It still looks like it's not actually sending.
Let's see. Okay, let's see if the link's working for me. So,
well, no, I'm trying to send it through Messenger, and it's not actually like posting anything.
Okay, interesting. Okay. It worked for me on Twitter. I was able to send out a link to your live stream on Twitter. Oh, hey, okay. Dave is here. Cartoonicus. I never got a link. Wait, okay. Did you send it in the Doug TenNapel group?
No, I sent it. Well, I sent it in the Doug TenNapel group. I sent it in the main group and like on our Facebook group, but it won't actually send through the Facebook group. It's like not actually acknowledging I'm sending anything. There's something wrong with the way my browser is interfacing with Facebook right now.
Okay, maybe I could message.
So I mean, like
Cartoonicus
is on our Twitter group. So if he goes over to Twitter, he can find it. So if you're listening, you can go find it there.
Yeah, we will want your deep cut knowledge of the Sonic lore.
Give him your phone number. You can call in. I don't have it set up for phones. Unfortunately, the sausage link. Hey, Isaac, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. Our super disorganized show today. So,
okay, backup plan. If you can't send it to him on Twitter, I could try sending it to him on Twitter if you get me.
I should be able to send it to him on Discord too.
Yeah.
So I see if I can't DM him on Discord. Oh wait, no, that's wrong. Cancel. Okay. Oh, here he comes.
We got him.
Yeah, looks like it.
Hey,
you there?
Hey,
hey, man. I do not know what is going on. I was sent the link in the Facebook, and it didn't actually send.
And I was able to get it through Twitter.
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing ever. So, the wild world of internet problems, connectivity problems. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Something my browser, Facebook are not playing. I don't know.
So Cartoonicus, I got to hear Matt reacting live to being shocked by Tales Gets Trolled Chapter 5 behind the scenes. So I'm curious, you're into Sonic. Were you familiar with Tales Gets Trolled before I Okay, interesting.
Now, does that mean that you already played the My Bite?
No, not at all.
No.
I think I forgot to download that one.
I thought you were saying that. All right, I'll give you the link.
Well, I could give the general intro if you want, since I was the one who proposed Tales Gets Trolled.
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right, so Tales Gets Trolled.
Get the link either, Isaac says.
It's a unique Very, very unique webcomic. I have not been following it since the beginning. It premiered in 2011. It initially started to gain popularity because it's the source of quite a few exploitable meme reaction images. So I think that's probably the first familiarity I had with it. In 2016, it started receiving a resurgence of interest. I'm not sure if this is true or just a myth, but apparently the creator was homeless for a while and was on hiatus, and then made a triumphant return back to the comic. By that time, it had built up a very successful, following of people genuinely interested in this comic. I'm not fully caught up, but I'm aware that later on, some of the fans actually took over helping the creator draw Tails Gets Trolled comics while he was trying to get back on his feet. So Tails Gets Trolled is a very violent, very bizarre, deviant art comic centering around Tails getting trolled by internet trolls. This incident sparks a violent gang war between a collection of Saturday morning cartoon characters and the trolls that quickly descends into X-rated violence. Also, the main thing of interest to me is it's very amateurish art, very, very difficult to read, like the typographical errors, which is part of the fun. But
and they're not all errors. That's part of the thing that's so strange. And this is one of the things, like just the sheer like mnemonic, right, mimetic aspect of Tails Gets Trolled. I just wish we had gotten around to this before Cartoonicus was just under the screws of his dissertation. I wish life had allowed for that.
Twitless?
Twitless. I'm sorry, I said Cartoonicus, didn't I?
Yeah.
But I wish Twitless when he's for Twitless' sake, because the epistemology Tails Gets Trolled, its place in the meta comic texture is something I love to hear and I know Twitless has thoughts on that.
Yeah. Something I could comment on that is
before we get going, Star has arrived. Welcome. We are talking about the cringe fest and genius that is Tails Gets Trolled. So, which is equal parts. Also, it is a hard R, by the way. Hide your kids, hide your wives.
How we're gonna get through without being taken down, I don't know.
All the F words. I did a stream where I read the first chapter, I think, words and all, and it instantly got demonetized and age restricted.
Well, the beauty is that I have so few viewers, and I love every one of you, but I have so few viewers that I will never be monetized.
So something you said about wishing we had Twitless here. So if Twitless was here, something I think would probably interest him is, because Tails Gets Trolled is kind of amateurish, we frequently have moments where there are sort of continuity questions. There's a very memorable example where a chapter ends, the next chapter begins, shows a single scene from the previous chapter, and then immediately cuts to another scene. So my theory is, I think that this was created as sort of like a straight ahead writing style. And then when a chapter ends, it ends maybe arbitrarily, just based on page number. But so really, I think the best way to read it is just kind of like binge a chunk of it, so you start seeing the flow across it. So not just the typo errors, but also like the weird art errors sometimes make it hard to interpret. But if you make the effort to interpret it, what's most interesting to me is that the creator clearly has like a very vivid imagination. Like the figures may have like the stick figure quality, but you can often like tell what they're thinking, right? The expressions read, the action tends to make logical sense. You can tell like if there's a punch, you can feel the follow through of the punch. So that's my basic pitch on it. I have thoughts on some of maybe like some of the more complex theories about the comic from later chapters. I'm sort of interested in you guys's. What's your virgin reaction to the first few chapters?
So yeah, I binged the entire first. What do you call it? Section? Not sure.
Chapter 1.
Is it a chapter? And it was like 60 pages.
Oh wow. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Chapter.
Oh,
2
okay. They're in
trilogy.
chapters. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I read the entire first chapter, and I'm putting in the chat my response to it.
Oh boy.
Here we go. We'll go ahead.
Oh, is Dave still bullying Twitless ruthlessly?
I think he's come back just to do it, and sadly, Twitless isn't even here to appreciate it. So
we have
I
an
hadn't seen
actual
Dave in a
troll.
while. Life had happened, but Dave's been back. I hadn't seen him for a while in between things. Life happens and whatever, and I think he's been back recently, which I appreciate very much so. But unfortunately, Twitless is not even here to appreciate it. So.
Okay, Cartoonicus has shared with us the Ratatouille bad reaction meme.
This was literally my reaction.
All right.
Scroll down.
Oh.
Oh man.
Oh my
No, God, please, no, no. No. Wait. As a kid, as a wife, human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, practice Perry. Oh!
It just keeps going.
Why? Why would you do this?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine, and you're not really fine.
No.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Wow, this is garbage.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, Cartoonicus, for subjecting you.
Suffice to say, this comic broke me.
Okay, so
So you're saying
what's interesting for me is I kind of like know some of the later chapters. So for me, this is what's interesting hearing you guys react is this was my reaction to chapter 1. So my pitch on the reason I recommended Tails Gets Trolled is Tails Gets Trolled is my favorite example of someone who clearly like has amateurish art skills and extremely poor writing skills, writing a comic that I genuinely love. I don't like Tails Gets Trolled. Ironically, I just love Tails Gets Trolled. I aspire to be a webcomic artist at the level of Tails Gets Trolled. So someday. So I think Reese needs a minute to collect himself.
Here's the thing. See, there was no way I was going to read another chapter, but I wanted to go into it informed. So I looked up like an hour and a half lecture on YouTube about the comic.
Well, I think the first story arc has been like turned into motion comics.
It was as bad as reading the comic.
Oh my god!
The guy went in 100% so unprepared. He doesn't know anything about any of the characters that are being used. He's just constantly having to answer questions with, I don't know. It was excruciating. But the result is I did get a general idea of how the entire story goes.
So I tell you what. So here's Here's part of the thing that I find fascinating about the project as a whole, right? And that is that it's like the original One Punch Man, right? Where the art not great, but the skill of the creator is such that it still captures the mind of so many readers. And the thing, I do not know a lot about Sonic, right? So many of the characters I don't know. And so there's a certain level to which for that, even not knowing who these people are, the story still is able to capture and tell and deal with these different voices in a way that I find fascinating and bizarre. But I mean, it's just like getting into like this pop culture zeitgeist that is just remarkable and baffling. I mean, yeah.
Similar reaction to me. Now, I have I'm kind of a Sonic nerd, right? So that part of it clicked with me. I think the fact that bad Sonic comics is a subgenre really helped with this one. There are lots of extremely bad Sonic comics. This starts out as what seems like just an extremely bad Sonic comic. Mario characters start showing up, and then the story that emerges is kind of like this violent. It's a story of revenge and forgiveness and reconciliation and betrayal, right? And he uses characters like Tails in canonical Sonic media tends to be bright but a little bit more naive. Shadow is generally a darker character, a bit more of an anti-hero. Sonic's generally more of a sympathetic type, not wanting to kill. So they're in very broad sense, it's fitting with them. But then of course, Tails gets trolled, transformed them. So Shadow's never like a brutal X-rated murderer and he never says like the F word in canonical Sonic media, right? So It's almost like he's using these characters as archetypal ideas. They're like the toys in his imagination, and then he's building this kind of like violent gang war, Quentin Tarantino style narrative with the cartoon characters. And knowing the cartoon characters helps you, I guess, like translate the Rosetta Stone. But then there'll be times where I'll like see a character. I don't know anything about League of Legends, right? So I don't know what the League of Legends characters deal is. But once you start getting into the flow of it, I stop worrying about what I know about these characters, and you gradually get more and more wrapped up in the complex gang war that's being built up across these chapters.
And that was part of the thing I was wondering about. Jim has an interesting comment here. To me, Tails Gets Trolled is an insane ramblings that somehow resonate with the generation. And I would disagree that they're insane ramblings, although there's an extremity to it. But this resonation is the part of the thing that I find really interesting and question on. Is that because they have this, like because bad Sonic fan comics are a subgenre, because Sonic has had 2.5 generations of relevance, and so there are, despite the fact that I'm not really in the club, there are a lot of people that already have these concepts coded in there. So, because like one of the things they play on in, okay, so let me back up just a little bit for those people who've never read Tails Gets Trolled. A little bit of background for the story. Trolling in the world of Tails Gets Trolled is not merely internet trolling. It's a real world phenomenon of just being a jerk and making other people feel bad. And there is a whole class, social structure of bullies that are trolls, and they're trained by a real life troll, as in pitchforks and torches troll,
It's them hiding under a bridge.
Who's living under a bridge. Yes. So the Sonic and his friends enlist the help of famous troll hunters from across pop culture. and so two of these are Mario and Luigi, and there is within this version of Mario and Luigi, they have their own take on it. But one of the things that Mario and Luigi have is this underlying sibling rivalry that plays heavily into Chapter 4 as a theme, and uh, it's this it becomes this big element within the thing, and it's interesting because like that's the thing that's been hinted at in the Mario Brothers media, but it's never really been expounded on. And so like you've got these milestones of millennial pop culture, and they're shorthand for character dynamics. And so the author Laserbot is using them like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? Where they have this thing that you recognize and they play it down, and that moves on as the story moves along. You have these shorthand, but that it's not entirely true to the material, because we're dealing with this hyper violent reflection of or version of, it's very edgelord, very millennial edgelord stuff. And that's the thing I think is so interesting, is how it's been able to resonate. And my question is it because of the comics with an X style purity of the piece, or is it because of the cultural memberberry aspect of it all? And that's one of the things I'm still trying to figure out.
Well, if we're going to talk about edgelords, we got to talk about Shadow, because, and this is one thing I really hated about the comic, was that it feeds into this idea that has plagued Shadow's character for like 15 years now, where in his first two, well, at least in his first, let's say, first two games, he was actually a very deep character, right? His tragic backstory and everything actually meant something. There was character development that went through there. And then somewhere along the lines, people just got this stereotype of him as the ultimate broody edgelord. And that's what he remained for like another 10 years. And only now is just starting to get out of that again.
To be fair, with this being 2011, that was a new meme back then.
Yeah. But
I'm sorry, I spaced for a second. What was the new meme?
Shadow being just a giant edgelord, and Shadow has a gun.
Right.
Shadow has a gun. Right.
I feel like that's got to be one of the major cruxes of this comic, at least, starting out. Right.
So Cartoonicus, you're huge into Sonic lore. So like I kind of agree. Like these aren't like good representations of the personalities of the characters. These are sort of the memes of the characters. But to me, that's almost kind of like the point. Like this isn't.
I wouldn't even go that far. I mean, maybe Shadow is. Like, one of the things that got me was that these characters didn't actually feel like they were anything to do with their original characters. They felt like they were the artist expressing his thoughts through them.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So one of the big questions is, do you guys think that Tails gets trolled is itself a troll? Like, do you think this person is sincere, or do you think they're making fun? Do you think that they're kind of like aware of the absurdity of this all?
Well, according to the that other video I was talking about watching, they said that later on the comic is incredibly self-aware, and it goes as far as to start making fun of itself.
Maybe I need to clarify because then the question is, okay, well, what's the difference between a fourth wall break? It's really a difference of what's the difference between a person making this comic because they're autistically obsessed with the characters, and what's the difference between a person making this comic because they want to play into wouldn't it be cool if I could go viral by making one of those. So people compare this to Sonichu a lot.
Right.
They compare it to Sonichu because they're both like infamously weird webcomics, but Sonichu is very different because I think the only reason people read Sonichu is because they're obsessed with Christian Weston Chandler as a person and the lore of the creator. There isn't as much internet drama around Laserbot. There were a couple little things where he had some like arguments with his fans, but I think people read Tails Gets Trolled because they're actually intrigued with where this story is going. So Tails Gets Trolled fans are fans of the comic. Sonichu fans are only interested in Chris Chan lore, essentially.
So I'm not getting this. People keep talking about Chris Chan. I thought Sonichu was David Gunterman.
Is that Liquid Chris?
Liquid Chris?
I don't know who David Gunterman. I don't know. I can't catch your reference.
Another. Well, like I said, I thought he was the Sonichu guy, but definitely an infamous, another infamous autistic internet artist from back then. Twitless once referred to him as my evil twin.
Boy, okay, Dave, I don't know that person. I know
what's the name you're trying to think of? David
Gonterman, Gonterman.
Twitless might have sent you down a rabbit hole.
We actually created a character out of him for Super Scold, and that is the homeroom teacher who's a comic book nerd, Dennis Gunterman.
Right. David Gonterman, a.k.a. Davykins, Foxfire. David Foxfire is a fan fiction author and artist who is known mainly for the controversial comic American Kitsune fanfic, furry-themed Foxfire Scarlet P.I. webcomic series.
So that's definitely not Sonichu.
Yeah. Dating back to 95, he's produced several crossover stories which involve Sailor Moon, Power Rangers, and Sonic the Hedgehog, which in franchise includes fanfic universe, blah, 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 blah. Huh. He also created a guest strip for It's Walkie. Wow. Oh, here we go. Easily as notorious in the 90s and 2000s as Kristen Weston Chandler and Dakari Mika King are today, he's managed to fade from the public eye, mostly maturing in the intervening years with a fast turnover. So he was in the same circles as Chris Chan back in the day.
Okay. It's in the sense that they're infamous, weird 90s comics references. I got it. But no, that is not the creator of Sonichu. So do not Google the creator of Sonichu. I have Googled the creator of Sonichu. I'm telling you, please don't.
All right.
There we go.
There is there is this dude on the internet on YouTube who has done a lengthy documentary series on Chris Chan that is hundreds of hours long.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's basically no reason to read Sonichu because all Sonichu is sort of a document of the creator.
One man's mental illness.
Yeah, his mental illness. And the thing about Chris Chan is I think Chris Chan kind of started out fun because the mystery is, well, who is this guy and what's this weird comic about, Sonic and Pikachu? And then it gets darker and darker and more sad. The joke gets old. Laserbot's story is more inspiring, you can bounce back. You can do anything with your life. Never give up.
And one thing that's somewhat ironic is that the story of Tails Gets Trolled, the first chapter, is very much what actually happened to Chris Chan. Right? He went out there to try to live his best life, and he was mercilessly picked on and railroaded and harassed. And
that's what I wondered if that was the case here with.
I would wonder, and I don't know. Laserbot has probably said it may be coincidental because it's not like it was unique. That was a unique turn of events to happen to Chris Chan. But part of me wonders whether that was a commentary on that, and then it became something else. I have no idea.
It certainly feels like it when you're reading it, at least to me.
I think people have asked
the metal may appear soon.
Oh,
okay. So Laserbot has been asked in the past if he has any kind of like mental illness or special needs, and he says he's claimed that he doesn't have any special needs. He's just really bad at spelling. And my read is on Laserbot is he's pretty intelligent. He's intelligent enough that he can construct a complex plot and fairly complex characters, right? So I'm not getting the vibe from Laserbot that he is insane or anything. I get the vibe that this is a sort of genuine weird vision he has of these characters. And then I guess the last question is, is he drawing in the Microsoft Paint style because that's the only way he can draw this comic, or is he drawing in the Microsoft Paint style because that adds to the goofy humor of it all?
I mean, one thing.
That's something I've wondered too, because also the lettering is terrible. Like as far as lettering goes, it's functional, but it's terrible. And not just the spelling, but the layout. And there are spelling errors that seem to be like intentionally bad. Like misspelling like simple words. Not just like there, and there that people like might miss in the mix, but
or confusing. He once confused the word quintessence for coincidence, and he spelled the word quintessence correctly. He just used it in place of coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, one thing I noticed though about the word bubbles is that it's not just the spelling; it's the overall like just grammar and sentence structure itself. I figure either English is not his first language, and this is all being translated through Google Translate, or he's doing this very on purpose.
It would have to be the best on purpose job, because it even has like vocal quirks. Like he says things like them trolls, right? So it's bad grammar, but it's bad grammar the way a person who's speaking would use bad grammar. Sometimes when he has a misspelling, it's a misspelling that's based on sounding out the word without knowing how to spell it, like breaded
or like here, like here he has damped instead of damn it, right?
Yeah.
And he actually there's been other pages where he actually spells out DAMNIT or damn it as a single word, right? Instead of the typical damn it, which is DAMMIT, slang or spelling for it. Star says so basically he's dyslexic unless it's somewhat intentional, or it could just be one of these things where the dude's like just pounding out text, right? Not worrying about the spelling, just going at it. First draft kind of stuff, right? It's like a lot of writing teachers say never proof your first draft, just type. Get through it, work it out, and then as you're editing, go back and correct. I've never been able to do that. I chisel sentences as I write them. So I have never been able to do that.
So
I generally have like an entire conversation plotted out in my mind before I ever put it on paper.
So deep lore relating to that, there is he made something called Tails Gets Trolled Polished a few years after he started Tails Gets Trolled. And it seems like he, according to him, he wanted it to be a little bit more polished and even like have better spelling and lettering than the first comic, right? So I think he improved in his lettering style. And again, it's the question of, do you think that this is a person who is faking this, or is this a person who generally thought, oh, my spelling's better, I'll redraw Tails Gets Trolled now that my spelling and art is better? It was roundly criticized. Nobody liked the new style. So he eventually apologized and went back to just making the original comic and not trying to redraw it, right? So he did do a second draft with more careful editing, and nobody liked it. And he added a whole second. That's the weird thing. Now, did he add a whole new character to Tails Gets Trolled Chapter 1 just to troll his audience? Or is he genuinely saying, hey, I actually think this is better, I want to add some new characters, and then actually received criticism from his audience, changed his mind, and went back to the original?
That meme I just put up, I feel like this is that meme, the comic.
The crying face.
Right. And the lol would come out of this guy, right?
I guess I could see that. I'm not
sure.
Do you think he's the Soy Jack, or do you think he's the Giga Jack?
He's both.
Could be.
the characters are so separated from anything they actually are in their canon that I'm willing to jump on the idea that he's doing this all on purpose, because he would have to be, again, by writing the way he does, that's part of how he's completely separating them, because it's just, like I said, what do we call it, a rant. That is, of course, one of the things that broke me so much, was having to actually make it through all that dialogue. It was very, very frustrating to actually try to read.
I found the first chapter to be somewhat frustrating, but once I feel like I got the feel for how he was using the story, how it was moving along. I haven't had any difficulty with it. Metal says it's not intentional but genuine.
Right.
I guess I can see that. And the idea that it's not bad on purpose, where it's like we're in an ironic kind of thing, not like because like here's an example from classical art, right? So if you look at Picasso.
Okay, so wait. Sorry to interrupt you, but look at this. Look how in the final word there from Shadow, how suddenly the ER is literally a smaller case than the rest of the word.
Right.
Implying he maybe typed it wrong, erased it in Microsoft Paint, typed ER, but had the size wrong, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And instead of it, and it's in Microsoft Paint, so you can't just edit text as text once it's on there. Yeah.
And he didn't fill in the white spot to the right of Luigi's head where the white box is.
Now, speaking of Microsoft Paint, there is something interesting one of those guys on the video I was watching brought up. And that is that for what we would technically call poor art, right? You will notice, now he's drawing this most likely with just a mouse, right, in Paint.
I would assume.
Notice there isn't a single straight line. It would be all too easy. In fact, I'm guessing for most comics like this, if you found these amateurs out there just trying to use Paint, that's where you're going to see is it click, 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 and you're going to get all this geometry like it's a Nintendo 64 game. This guy is actually going to the work to straight out draw every single one of these lines with a mouse. You got to give him credit for that.
There's also a weird, I wish I knew what the program was, because sometimes there will be like the art style will suddenly change drastically and you'll start having like motion blur effects. There's a later chapter where he'll have whole panels drawn and it looks like there's just some sort of blur tool that went over chunks of it. And was he just screwing around, or did he accidentally blur something and not notice it? Right. Like he meant to have a blur effect over here and then it covered over a whole panel over here.
Well, you're talking about the idea that he started getting better and people didn't like the art style, right? So I wouldn't be surprised.
That's the polished one. So polished is different. Polished is basically considered non-canon because he tried. Right. It's just harder to read because he has like this sort of giant decorative border around everything, and he tried to like shade, and it was bad shading. This is more like simple 2D cartoon shading.
Right. My point is that I wouldn't be surprised if at that point he got his hands on something like Photoshop, and suddenly he's got all these capabilities that you don't have in Microsoft Paint.
So if you get to chapter 2, I think it's, am I in chapter 2 or am I in chapter 3? I'm in chapter 3. So if you get to chapter 3, there's a fight between Mario and Luigi, and we immediately start using lots of motion blur effects, like maybe like a way overemphasis on it, but using it to imply a high octane, fast moving fight. Okay, so Cartoonica, something you mentioned was using the characters, but them not really fitting with their canon. So this Mario fight has something I want to highlight. So Mario and Luigi use abilities from the games, but they use them in strange ways. So Mario uses fireballs, but I don't think I've ever seen Mario in the games like just unleash a gigantic blast of fire Dragon Ball.
Right. We all know that the comic is a giant Dragon Ball Z ripoff.
Yeah. Well, okay. And then Luigi starts using abilities like the Tanuki suit and the stone transformation. And then he starts using them creatively. So in the midst of the fight, Mario tries to hit Luigi, and then Luigi is able to turn just part of his body into stone. So he's using a Mario ability, but he's using it in a way that's we'd never see it used in a Mario game, and then making a creative application with that power. So, or like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, any Shonen Jump battle manga, there's often an emphasis on creative use of your superpowers.
Does anybody remember Super Mario Brothers Z?
Oh yeah, was that 2011?
Sounds about right. But the deal is, actually, it might have been earlier. Somewhere along the lines, I'm guessing it probably has a lot to do with Sonic Adventure really putting emphasis on Supersonic for the first time. This was kind of a thing all over the internet, was turning Sonic into Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, so that is kind of like a true thing about it. Like this is very much early 2010s internet. Yeah.
Right.
And I'd also kind of like create. So you mentioned, Sonic characters having like the sketch of their personalities, but it's like the exaggerated, edgy meme version of them. That's kind of true of Mario and Luigi too. Like it's been okay. Speaking of old, 2010s internet videos, used to be like a running joke of just having like Luigi be a bitter asshole and him and Mario squabbling all the time.
Right.
And actually, kind of like around the time the Mario movie came out, we've been maybe moving past that and getting back to no, Mario and Luigi are actually friends. They don't hate each other's guts. But this also is partaking in that meme a bit, where Luigi's living in the shadow of Mario becomes Luigi seething with resentment and rage and desiring revenge on Mario.
I mean, that's why he's L-Man or whatever his name is.
What is that? Yeah.
But now, do we want to spoil it? Because we know what happens later on.
Do I want to spoil it? All right.
What's interesting here, am I crazy? Or in this image of Daffy, has he for once actually gone and traced something? That looks almost exactly like the other image.
The one of Daffy getting shot?
Yeah, we saw another image of his face close up like that. I swear that's the same image.
Well, I mean, that wouldn't be tough to do with just
right. But I just got finished saying that he's like, he's not taking the easy way out on any of this stuff.
I'll look for it. Sometimes I see tricks like
the metal points out that to be fair, Sonic was already like Dragon Ball Z. Definitely was inspired by lots of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying it became a big thing to actually show. Sorry about that. It became a big thing to actually show off, animate, etc. Those big fights in fan fiction.
Oh, my page button isn't working.
Okay, we've got some interesting facts from the chat. Metal asks, didn't he upgrade to GIMP at some point? And then Pepper Millers, who I don't believe I've seen around, welcome, Pepper Millers, says he used both MS Paint and GIMP, which makes a lot of sense.
That would explain the blur motion effect.
The blur effect, yeah, it's just a thumb smudge tool.
Was GIMP a thing back then?
Oh yeah. GIMP we were using GIMP to do a lot of our graphics for Forces back in 2006. I was using Paint Shop Pro back then, but Chris did everything he did in GIMP. So a lot of our lettering and stuff was in GIMP. Wile E. Coyote is the best character and Tails gets trolled.
Okay, so I won't spoil it, but something interesting about Wile E. Coyote and Elmer Fudd is in later chapters, it's explained that they have a connection, and that connection is another example of Laserbot using characters from pre-existing media in kind of a creative way. So I'll spoil this. So he has a lot of cartoon characters where their theme is they're all hunters. Wile E. Coyote's a hunter, Elmer Fudd's a hunter, Sylvester and Tom from Tom and Jerry are hunters. And the fact that they're hunters relates to their ability, and they have a completely different way of fighting than any of the other groups. So there is an element of like, I'm just going to grab this cartoon character from over here and this cartoon character from over here and associate them.
Mm-hmm. And the way he's using them outside of the box. I mean, like some of the interactions are consistent, but some of them are not, right? Like Bugs is portrayed. Okay, so here's one really interesting thing. There's a little bit of a spoiler alert on here for this old comic. Bugs is one of the shown to be one of the main troll hunters. From actually we're I'm going to show some of this stuff on here. The Bug's one of the main troll hunters because he's always using his wits to defeat people that have it against him, that are trying to whatever. That's kind of his take on it. But there's a point which he's when Bugs is killed callously, and the killer says, "I don't know him. Why should I care?" Right? And it's interesting from the perspective of a non-millennial, non-Sonic fan, because he, Bugs was a big deal, but he's stopped being something of the cultural force that he was because Warner Brothers hasn't been using him effectively or very often. And that is by comparison, right? You have these Sonic characters that have that they when they go through their untimely demises in this big fight scene, they're really tore up about the death of their friends, but also not caring about the death of these other characters that are not part of their milieu or part of the thing. And it's interesting because there's sort of a meta commentary about the characters that you care about aren't the characters that we care about, and there are reasons for that. But this generational aspect that's in there, I think, is interesting, as well. And I'm not starting to make like necessarily a huge deep point about it, but the poignancy is definitely played, at least in the dialogue,
which is built on when Mario doesn't care about the death of Sonic characters, but he does care about things that relate to characters within the cast of Mario Brothers. So it's almost like the different cartoon universes are like factions or gangs, and I only care about my tribe's problem.
Mm-hmm. A new viewer, Commodorian, says, "Hello, good to see more people reading Tales gets trolled." Well, you're welcome. So, I am not back to your main point there, Marmaduke. I am not certain whether I think whether I would come to the opinion. Now, I guess I think so. I believe so. Metal has mentioned he's spoken with Laserbot and communicated with him, and that sincerity and genuineness is part of his milieu. That being said, from the reading itself, I'm not saying to disagree, but I don't know that I would have an opinion about whether I feel it's a troll or whether I feel it's genuine. But because it seems to me that those things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. In that, specifically in the way that the characters are being used, and this goes to something that you said earlier, Cartoonicus, they are being used in a way that is contrary to their canon presentation, even if they are consistent with some sort of mimetic costuming of their personalities, some exaggeration of their personalities. There are common threads, even if they're not, even if it doesn't end up where it started, sort of thing. So I think that there could be a situation where even if the work is sincere, that doesn't mean that it's not still satirical. And that's one of the things that I would, yeah, that I'm kind of that. I wouldn't. It is fascinating though, absolutely fascinating.
Commodorian is the web admin of the Tales Gets the Tales Gets Trolled web developer, by the way.
Well, the website's very navigable, so well done, man.
It also got a facelift since the last time I read it. Like the last time I read it, it had like a black art design and I don't know, almost very like 1990s internet 1.0 vibe. And this is much more like the DeviantArt, old school DeviantArt color scheme, which I kind of appreciate. Okay, well, Commodore, then I'll ask, since Commodorian, I'll ask about this. So the things like the animations, are these just like fan things that were included, or are these things that are sort of like part of LaserBot's original intention?
Yeah. If you're ever having problems with the email, with a website, there's a link at the bottom to shoot an email. Well, great. Joshua Hughes says, while we're waiting to hear about that, to be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Tails Gets Trolled. I don't know that I don't know that I do understand it.
I don't like that argument because it just allows you to say, if you don't like it, that's just because you're an idiot.
Yeah, well, I would agree, but I understand what's going on in the story. The despite the crudeness of the art and the many issues, like I mentioned with the lettering is bad. The action still flows. It reads like good comics, which is one of those interesting aspects about comics, is that they can be both good and bad at the same time. And that's one of the aspects about it. Joshua just made a Rick and Morty reference. Well, see, I haven't seen Rick and Morty, so I wouldn't know. I find Dan Harmon to be somewhat insufferable.
Commodorian confirmed, by the way, that the animation actually is by LaserBot. So what's fun about this is...
Oh, you there?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I forgot. I forgot that the video is muted. So, so LaserBots, I think, is like voicing and animating this.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually pretty coolly animated, but Shadow does have like a moment where he winds up his left fist and punches with his right fist, right? So it seems like confusion about things.
Right.
And then, okay, that still frame. So there's a still frame from the video, and then it's scrunched to fit onto the comic page.
Well, and one of the interesting things, so I was sitting in the dentist chair waiting for this morning, reading this page, waiting for the stuff to take effect on it. And so a video comes up, and I'm like, I don't obviously want to watch the video like at the dentist office. So I'm like, I turn the volume all down, and I'm trying to read the lips and try to guess what might be going on, or put the phone right next to my ear or whatever, so I'm not disturbing the other people getting holes cut in their mouth. And and then I flip the page, and the whole thing is out here to be read. And I was like, man, if I'd have just known that. But
oh yeah, the reference Pepper Mills and Brett McGowan are referencing the Amarek Hazen Cruz dub. So if you would like a dub version, there is a dub version that's semi-popular. I think it's pretty good. They do goofy voices for the characters. One of the things they do is they read out the typographical errors. So they'll pronounce "il" as "ill" if it's typed as "ill," which is a little bit jarring, but I guess that kind of fits with the fun of the comic. The comic is jarring. The audio dub is jarring in its own unique way.
I don't even know what these words mean. Not that one here. I don't even know what those words mean.
I think that's referencing I don't know if it's considered the official dub or not, but there's a pretty old dub of this comic that that's one of the ways that I got into it.
Okay. So are these people's usernames? Is that what
I'm assuming that's it. Yeah, I think if you just search Tails Gets Trolled dubbed, it'll be the first thing that comes up.
Okay.
I actually ought to put in my name for the official Tails Gets Trolled dub. See if I can get like a minor character or something.
Oh, there you go. Metal is explaining my lack of media literacy to me here about the Rick and Morty thing from earlier. So,
okay. So, and the dub is on Ultimate Tails Gets Trolled. So I'm guessing those are the usernames of the creators, and it's been re-uploaded on a dedicated channel for the Tails Gets Trolled audiobook.
Okay. This is great. Fizz says Rick and Morty always comes off as slightly less good Phineas and Ferb for adults. That's absolutely hilarious. If for no other reason than Phineas and Ferb is actually an excellent cartoon. Without reservation, without question, it is an excellent cartoon.
Well, don't forget, it's made by the same people who created Gravity Falls.
I've not seen Gravity Falls, so that means nothing to me.
You have missed out.
Possibly. So, one of the things that I found really strange about this movement right here in this thing is that Sonic, having strove to avoid violence in the beginning of the thing, and like becomes like a mass murderer, or become obsessed with murderous rage and just kills Eggman, just straight out, just knifes him.
Yeah.
And I did not see that coming.
And there's a payoff. So I think you left off at chapter 5, yes, Matt Reese, and there's a payoff for this later where we actually like reflect back on the earlier chapters and get more information on the psychology of some of the characters.
Oh wow! Okay.
So, yeah. Now, and again, this is referencing something. So this is I think that in Sonic X, there's a subplot where Sonic has a dark personality.
Okay.
So then it's kind of like the idea, okay, Sonic has a dark personality. So as he's becoming more violent and evil like Shadow and rejecting his pacifism, then he's evil Sonic. Well, okay, and that's the thing. I'm not sure if evil Sonic is supposed to be the same as dark Sonic. Like, it seems pretty coincidental, right? But he draws evil Sonic differently than he draws dark Sonic. So there's another thing where it's like, I have a hard time trying to interpret Laserbot. Is it a art mistake, or is it an intentional?
Well, it gave him the same eyes as Metal Sonic.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Because Dark Sonic has his normal eyes, but a darker fur color. Or am I or are we reading too much into it?
Well, right? Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's definitely something to be said, because he does take on that indigo color in like chapter 2 or whatever, as well as in chapter 4, and so, or 5.
The thing about the whole comic is the farther you get, the more fan characters and original content keep popping up. Yes. Originally, it was just, again, like we talk, say just somebody playing with a bunch of toys, but very quickly it becomes, well, no, not very quickly, but slowly over time.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting elements of that is that that's kind of the way that a lot of writers do writing. They start with the sandbox, right? With taking the action figures and mashing them together, and playing with fan creations, and then they start building, using that practice to start building their own stories. And it's like playing house, right? When you're a child, a small child, you play house, you imagine what being a grown-up is like, you pretend you're fixing the car, you pretend you're cleaning up, the whatever, you pretend you're fighting the dragon, and then when you become an adult, you really fix the car, you really scoop the snow, you really fight the dragons of our lives. And that's the one of the fascinating things I think about play, is that it mirrors this. And I think that one of the fascinating things about play is that it mirrors the struggles of quote unquote adult life, and at the same time our creative ventures follow the same kind of pursuit, where we first mimic and mirror the things that we appreciate, and then we develop our own thing. And whether that is in form or in, genre thing. So yeah.
Well, and anybody who knows anything about the Sonic comics, actually, it's a perfect example where even the professionals, you end up over the years with an entire universe that is relegated to the Archie comics, and another one now that's relegated to the IDW comics, right? So like
Cartoonicus, this might be
those
something
comics wish they were as good as Tails Gets Trolled.
Welcome, Metal. Welcome.
Hey.
Ken Benders is nearly on this level of so bad it's good, weird art.
I do not know that I have the wherewithal to dip my toe into the Ken Penders pond, but I will tell you this much: the thing that I have appreciated about this, looking at this and reading this for the show, is how accessible it is. So I think that's something that I don't know that Penders stuff would necessarily be. I fear it might not, but.
Commodorian Laserbot was homeless for a while. That, in addition to the art needing more work due to shading, etc., is why Tails Gets Trolled went on hiatus for quite a while. Yeah, I got into this when Laserbot came back, because when he came back, it was sort of a triumphant return. They advertised it on the website, and by then, some of the memes had entered into like public consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
All right,
So,
well, no offense, Metal. If you guys haven't been able to tell yet, I have contracted a cold, and it has just sucked all the life out of me. Or maybe that's the comic. I don't know. But it's 10 o'clock, and I think now that Metal is here to replace me, I think I will head out.
well, I think that's fair.
Yeah, we could tag out.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and suffering through Tails Gets Trolled. Although I can't understand how it would be a suffering. But maybe that's because I have no emotional attachment to Sonic at all, and well, some of us here have actually done their own Sonic fan comics. So, but that wasn't me. So thanks for coming on, and we will see you next time around, man.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep. Get well soon. I agree with Isaac.
I can proudly say I've never made a Sonic fan comic in my life.
I've doodled Sonic. I'm trying to think if I even did it as a kid. Like I've never done like a conscious effort, like try to make a whole Sonic story. Maybe I did like some little goofy drawings of Sonic as a youngster.
Oh, I've definitely drawn them for sure, but I've never ever gone more than a single picture or two.
See, and yeah, so Jim, so sorry to interrupt you guys on this. So Jim brings up this, sometimes it's like a golden age comic from the 30s or early 40s. I agree.
I could see that. Yeah,
I absolutely agree that is 100% accurate. So and that's one of the things that, like I said, I wish that Twitless could have made it, because I know that he had been digging really deep into golden age stuff.
but he's in the chat at least.
It's is he in the chat? Awesome. But yeah, that's one of the fascinating aspects, and I don't know if it's. I wouldn't imagine that it would be like an intentional thing, because I don't know that Laserbot would necessarily be reading a lot of Golden Age books. It doesn't necessarily feel like that would have been part of it, but at the same time,
oh hey, he's backstage.
Is it the?
I was literally here while you were saying, "I wish you were here."
Oh, dude! Well, awesome. I didn't see you in the chat earlier, so.
I just came on. I'm sad that I missed Cartoonicus because he and I think that they you just made the sly reference of
I did.
Yeah, because like the first comic that I ever really did was with Cartoonicus, and we did a first chapter for a Sonic fan comic. We were starting with Sonic 1. We were gonna straight adapt the games all the way from Sonic 1, and we only made it to like one issue before we said, you know what, let's do something else instead. So, but it was great. Like it was old school, like pull out a pencil and paper to like do a script and hand it over with like a 3-ring binder kind of a thing. I was gonna say that I think I kind of see. I don't know if I agree with the Golden Age comment. I see where it's going. I think this is way closer to the outsider art, indie grindhouse kind of. This is the kind of thing that would show up in like a punk rock magazine,
right?
You know what I mean? Where it's just like it's not because Golden Age still was trying to observe, even though they didn't. It was very nascent. They were basically pulling from comic strips and said they were trying to follow the rules, even if it was kind of like, hey, we're still kind of rough on the edges,
right?
Tales Gets Trolled is like an autodidact who's like, here are all the tools from my childhood, and I'm gonna make and I'm just gonna like mash them together with a bunch of weed, and I'm not even. That's actually literally what he does. It's not even an exaggeration.
Yeah.
The amount of scenes that are just like stoner parties, and that feels like way closer to like the kind of punk rock aesthetic you would see in a zine.
But that's part of the thing that I think is fascinating too, from a punk rock perspective, is that like the early punk rockers, what they were doing wasn't trying to invent a new genre. They were trying to give their spin on, old school classic rock and roll and rockabilly. In fact, the Ramones specifically said we were just playing rock and roll really fast. That was that was their whole mission. And so I think that it's one of these things that like in its with the in its.
Are we talking about like in America? Because like in Britain, it was very much just like straight.
Well, in Britain, you could actually trace British punk rock to a single Ramones show, where like all the founders of British punk rock were attending a Ramones show. So like that, there's a direct lineage from the Ramones to the Sex Pistols to the Clash. To all those guys, they were at a Ramones show when it happened.
But you know what I'm saying though, like the zine, the photocopy it, do it all, like doing it in Microsoft Paint.
But that's the thing I'm getting at though, right? So like the zines were very DIY, but if you go back to like early, especially Atlas, right, Timely stuff, like those guys were in a similar kind of vein where they were in the middle of all of it, trying Bill Everett. And I'm trying to remember the other guys, some of the other guys' names, but they were it was raw, right? And it was they were playing in the space of the newspaper strips, but they were also doing something different. And I think that some of them were, especially Everett, especially oh come on, I cannot remember the guy who created Human Torch right now.
Crap. Everett, Bill Everett?
Yeah, no, not Everett. Everett was created Namor.
Namor. Okay, is Everett and it starts with a B.
Yeah, I can't think of it right now.
I literally just wrote about it, so I'm gonna feel really embarrassed when I.
Anyway, point is I think
Burgos.
Right. Those guys kind of knew something was happening, right? And they were trying to lean into this, and I think that when you have those, I think the idea about the autodidactic aspect of this is definitely in play. And I think especially because we're dealing with all these preformed character templates that Tales Gets Trolled has in there, but at the same time, like Laserbot is taking the toys and like he's full on Sid. Right, he's from Toy Story.
Yeah, it's much closer to I think the punk rock aesthetic. I think there's you might be able to draw a parallel between some of the Golden Age because there was a lot of autodidacts and some amateurs at the beginning of the Golden Age, but they were using some of the older toys in terms of like some of the tropes and character types. So I'm not saying they were all original, but the punk rock kind of aesthetic is very much like riffing off of like pop culture. You know what I mean? Like I just read that issue of Ratfink comics, and it was very clear. It's like this is a, I'm making a joke out of Mickey Mouse, and
right.
And
Yeah.
And Golden Age was like an extension of the pulps, and I guess they ripped off certain things. It feels a lot closer because there's a cynical side to it, right? Because it's not just I'm doing this because I'm making new art to make money, whatever. I don't really care, which is kind of the Golden Age attitude. They didn't really care. Here, it's like I said, there's a more cynical side of like to kind of take these toys and be really rough with them and make them smoke pot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just we have to have Timo and Mario and Luigi and like covered in cartoony MS Paint blood. You know what I mean? It's got this
very Robot Chicken in a way.
It's Robot Chicken. It's how do I put this?
I don't know.
The Robot Chicken is smarter, but Tails Gets Trolled is Idiot Savant. So it doesn't mean that one isn't. I don't want to put Tails Gets Trolled like underneath Robot Chicken, because in some ways I think Tails Gets Trolled can be funnier. But
I would have put it in the opposite. This is high art.
No, I think it's Idiot Savant. I think it's I don't think like I said, it's someone who doesn't even know the gold he has necessarily. Like Robot Chicken is like deliberately constructed. Like there's that's the erector set. You know what I mean? Like we're constructing these jokes, we're setting this up, we know what we're doing, and Laserbot does this stuff, and whether or not he knows he's being funny, he's being way funnier on a bunch of different levels.
There are gags that are clearly Laserbot intending to write it as a gag. The guy without ears, repeatedly saying, "What? I don't have effing ears." Right? That is classic.
But it's such low hanging fruit. It's funny because it's funny in spite of itself. Because it's very authentically what it is, and I think that's kind of what.
With the guy with no ears, though, right? Here's the thing about that is it's low hanging fruit, but it's also like not right, and because on the one level it's like it's a stupidly silly joke, but on the other level it's juxtaposed with this supposedly serious meeting in which they find themselves, where the narrative is pretending to build up the stakes, right? And then you've got this one guy who doesn't belong and is a dumb joke. And so, right. So it's like, it's like gesturing its own point. And so like, and that's not a dumb joke, right? That's the guy without ears is funny. Yes.
I mostly agree with
let me supply a couple more examples.
Right.
That might
the thing I said before I came on was that it's not intentional, it's genuine.
That's I was gonna say the authenticity behind it. It's so lowbrow, and that's what I'm saying. People, there's an irony that it's so ironic. I think what Marmaduke had mentioned, which is it's so ironic. It flips it overflow integers back into something else. And like I said, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but there is a magic going on here. I'm not going to deny that at all. I'm just saying that like comparing it to Robot Chicken, I think demonstrates a few similarities in terms of like taking your
more
toy.
So I just think you're playing in a sandbox with a bunch of toys.
You can't waste a second of time for stop motion. Like a stop motion animator, everything has to be deliberate because they're going to have to meticulously photograph it, right? Because this is MS Paint comic, there's a bit more of a move fast and break things element to the humor. He'll try a bunch of different gags. If one doesn't fly, whatever, because we've got like there are 30 other things that could make you laugh if one of his gags.
Well, it's simultaneously overwritten, underwritten, overdrawn, underdrawn. You know what I mean? Like depending on what you're looking at, it can like wield any of those things all at once. Robot Chicken doesn't have access to that. Robot Chicken is meticulously constructed, which is how it works, the way it works. So it's fascinating to bring that up because it actually demonstrates something that's going on here, especially when he starts getting in some of the other guest artists, and it's like, you know what I mean? And he just like balls to the walls, kind of like anime scenes going on. So like I said, it can at any moment you could turn a page and like I said, get underdrawn, underwritten stuff that still manages to kind of be funny, or get overwritten, overdrawn that just breaks things in the other direction. So like the concept of breaking is very much at play, which is one of the reasons why I think Cartoonicus was struggling. He said he broke,
Yeah.
he said he
Well,
broke
and I
breaking.
mean, one of the things that I think Cartoonicus, I told him this too, that I think he really struggled with is that because he has an awareness and an affection for these toys in their proper boxes.
Oh yeah,
That like separating those out. Whereas myself, not a millennial, not a Sonic fan. I don't know a lot of these characters. So
well, he
I'm
messes
just
up.
taking
He screws up Batman later on. You know what I mean? So like there are
right,
some
which
toys in
I
here.
haven't even gotten to. I mean, like Batman was introduced,
Yeah.
but like also the in chapter I think it's 6 or 5, whatever it is, I can't remember. Where they introduce Pac-Man. It's 5. In the 5, they introduce Pac-Man as like a friggin' clairvoyant visionary character. Was just so bizarre and mind numbed. I just couldn't even get my head around that, honestly. Also, side note on this, I was talking earlier about how weird it is that the idea of the characters and how with what blatant disrespect and wanton disregard Laserbot deals with the cartoons of a previous generation. At the same time, he projects. He had introduced the troll character, the Troll King, who's an actual troll from the medieval world, and then he introduces Pac-Man, and Pac-Man himself is a non-human being from the medieval world, and I'm like, screw you, pal. I'm not that old.
Getting back to
You're right.
the
Should've came
idiot
from the
savant
dinosaur time.
observation from Twitless. So if you buy that, this is kind of like an it's a vision. He has a muse, and the auto dictat is just delivering to us what the muse gives to him. I think there's a scene where 2 of the oldest of the defenders are like Frogger and the Leapfrog, which is like infant, kind of like preschool level games and edutainment. So it's sort of like the thing that I was introduced to first as a child is like the first archetype of the good, and then later more and more characters are added into my lexicon. So I think like one of them is like Doug, and I don't remember the blue guy, but from the cartoon Doug. And then one of the comments Pac-Man has to Tails is, you don't need to train with Doug because you're already stronger with them. So it's almost like he has like a mental category of how cool characters are, and the cooler the character is, the more powerful they are, and Doug isn't that cool, so Doug isn't particularly powerful.
He's right. I never saw the appeal of Doug.
I agree.
I think there's something to that. I will say this is something that I do want to bring up, which is I am not, when you're dealing with the idiot savant, the genius from the gutter, and there's something, like I said, there's something really impressive about that, but sometimes it also takes you to some dark places. I will say that the sexual content in this gets to be, that's where like I could definitely see Cartoonicus, because like there in a lot of what we're seeing, like I'm able to, it's so separate. So even though it's playing with toys that I do like, and bashing them, and like Sid from Toy Story, which is like a really great example. I'm able to like make a separation. I'm like, this is not the real Knuckles. Like Knuckles is not really like out of his mind on weed. So I have no problem just like going, whatever, this is just a meme comic. But I will say when it starts getting into like the sexual content with it, like that's where it shows like I don't want to make a downer out of this, but it's I don't think we can have this conversation about it and also praise it without mentioning that there is also some stuff in there that's like,
oh yeah,
I sure hope.
Spoiler alert, Luigi gets raped to death.
I mean, like, among other things, like the amount of like sexual stuff that happens to Amy or Hello Kitty, and it's just like when you're taking innocence, and because like a lot of these characters, especially some of the female ones, are avatars of female innocence. Amy Rose, Hello Kitty, Pam from Doug, and Laserbot is deliberately subjecting them to sexual assault and rape. And I hope, and I say this in light of what we've recently learned about Neil Gaiman, right? And sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and sometimes sexual depravity in comics is just a sign of a creator being sexually depraved.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I feel like we're like one news article away from hearing about the people that R. Crumb has, you know, done awful things to, or Alan Moore. And I hope that we also don't get a similar story arc for this author.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I mean, like I said, I'm only the first page of chapter 6, so I have not gotten into any of that stuff. I mean, there's been discussions of that, but one of the things typically that I've seen in the first part of it is the depravity is still, while it's present so far, while it's mentioned verbally and that kind of thing, it's still given the gloss of depravity, right? Like it isn't like in any way glorified yet. I don't know if it gets that later on, or if we're talking about if they're using these sort of sexual interludes or elements in the same way to fridge these characters, to create victims that they can be saved later on, or what it is on that. I don't know.
I'm actually that comment is like interesting, but that's also the kind of comment that actually worries me.
Yep.
Because it's like, oh, he's drawing if his muse is drawing from his life experience, and that's another interesting choice, right? In a sense, we're getting a little bit of his I wouldn't say memoir, but we're getting his self being projected through this. I think it's another reason that makes it so authentic and why people are resonating with it. But it also speaks to the fact that this creator may have has clearly gone to some dark places or been subjected to dark places. Right. And I don't know what the full ramifications of that are, but I mean, just the little tidbits that I've heard, sometimes it's like, oh, I sure hope
that is he talking about rape and murder and violence because he wants to say something productive about darkness he's experienced and seen, or is he talking about murder and rape and violence because he likes going into that dark place?
Actually, we have somebody in the chat trying to shed some light on this. Laserbot has based on real events that someone he knows experienced. He was technically Knuckles in that situation. Based some of the essay event on real events. So which, you know, that's horrifying. So
that's what I'm saying. Like it's one thing I will say, and this is about as serious as I'll get with it, is one of the things about meme culture and that is sometimes sad is when we are at a great distance on the internet laughing at something that has ultimately a dark side to it. So does anyone remember Consequences Will Never Be the Same?
Yeah.
I've called the internet police. Was her name Jessie Slaughter or something? So there was this whole internet meme. This dad has like a memeable meltdown on camera, on a live thing, and he's like, I've backtraced and I've called the internet police. Everyone laughed. It's become like Consequences Will Never Be the Same has become part of internet parlance. But behind that story was a girl who was very attention driven, and a father who was I think that things came out about him being an alcoholic. Like it was a very toxic like life situation. I don't remember what happened to Jesse, but I remember looking into it, and it was just like reading into their lives that we had at a distance had laughed at, and it was like social services needed to be called right after that.
Well, and it's actually so. Well, it's interesting you bring that up too, because earlier in the conversation, we had fielded some questions from the chat about the comparisons, or surface level apparent comparisons between the Sonichu comic and Tails Gets Trolled, and how they're for people that are not in the loop, they kind of get lumped together in the public mind.
A little bit, sure, yeah, especially with the drawing ability, I guess.
Yeah, that's some of that, and also, I mean, for the normies out there to know that there is more than one Sonic fan comic is an absolute mind blow. I wouldn't know how many there were, except, you know, I'm related to certain Sonic fans. So
is that still a threshold people are crossing? There's more than one Sonic fan comic?
I believe there is.
Okay.
I literally think that is a threshold people are still crossing.
Wow.
There are people. I still believe there are people that do not know like were unaware of Sonic before the movies came out. Even though like they've been part of pop culture for 20 years.
That's
There's
fair.
people that are just so disconnected from from games that they're just unaware of it.
To bring it back to this conversation, though, I guess what I'm trying to say is that while we're laughing at the meme, sometimes it makes me like reminds me of some of the darker sides of memes, especially since he's already channeling so much of that darkness,
Right.
like I said, sexual assault darkness. And I hope we never get the message of, oh,
Yeah.
what LaserBot did on his Discord or something, or even just hearing the things that happen. Like, so I don't, whether he's victimizer, whatever. I hope that never comes out. It's always a shame when it does. But like I said, it does make me wonder sometimes because of how far this one goes. Like you said, like rape is not a one off. It's
I'd concur. Now, something I'll say is like in contrast to Sonichu, where the more you read Sonichu, the worse you feel about it, because then real people's lives end up getting drawn into Christian's whole world, and real people end up getting humiliated by that his whole life circumstance, right? Like I've never seen like hate troll yelling about Tails Gets Trolled. So if that is, that is a question, but it's never intruded into the community. The community around Tails Gets Trolled is very upbeat and positive, right? Like I never hear about the Tails Gets Trolled community running around and bullying someone off the internet. So as a community, I don't think there's that kind of like darker element to it, in contrast to look at the silly people on the internet. Oh, those are real people whose lives got destroyed. So I connect with your concern, Twitless, but I've never seen evidence of that. You can like, I've never seen like an evidence of like a nasty thing going on offline.
It's not the community, I guess, that I'm worried about. I'm speaking specifically about the creator, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and it's just like I said, there are certain comic book creators that I'm shocked that we haven't heard those things about yet. Like I said, Alan Moore, I feel like any day with the amount of sexual darkness that populates his work, it's like, where does that come from? Or how can you channel that? You know what I mean? Like, with Neil Gaiman, it was like, wow, how did you channel it? Oh, wait, here's why. So that's the kind of thing I'm expressing concern about, is while we're all laughing, I'm hoping it's not built on a bed of
right. Well, and I mean, yeah, and that's one of the things where actually it's really interesting, and I don't know anything
but I'm glad
LaserBot.
the community is positive, because I'm not familiar with the community, so that's good to hear.
Yeah. But like one of the things I was going to say is I don't know anything about LaserBot's thing, but finding out or hearing about that he'd gone through homelessness. I've been directly and tangentially involved in homeless youth services for almost 20 years. So thinking about the things that kids on the street go through is definitely an interesting.
There's a hardness definitely behind like his writing and worldview. There's a hardness, and it's the kind of hardness you would expect. I can only imagine it because I've never been in that position, but it's a hardness that you would expect would be put into someone who has gone through that. This is not a friendly disposition towards the world. It's one where it's like, it's hardened, and someone who really likes weed and Bleach, the anime, not the
Okay, that makes a little more sense. This was like, I didn't see any Bleach in the chapters I read.
They're all dressed in Bleach robes and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. If you're familiar with the manga Bleach, you could see it everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and the fact they all have essentially like, super abilities, are there like Bankai that they're unleashing later, and it's like, okay, like you can totally see some of the influences when you get to see like some of the characters use their like power.
Oh yeah, so I'm actually friends with somebody who's done guest art for Tales Gets Trolled. I was talking to him maybe a week or two ago recently. His name is Brock. He did some guest art for chapter 23 and chapter 24. And he is also somebody that's heavily influenced by his love of Bleach. And you can see it in the pages that he drew. There's every time he drew Wile E. Coyote, there's this really great page where Wile E. Coyote is like just completely impaling and eviscerating Sonichu, shows up in it. It's wonderful art, probably too graphic for YouTube, but it's a lovely page, and you could just see it. I think they probably picked their guest artists for the same reasons.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely.
Pepper Miller says Robert Crumb is also a master degenerate. You will get 0 arguments from me on that.
I'm shocked that because some people have been like, "Oh, he." I'm shocked that they haven't gotten him on anything, especially the stuff I've heard him and Alinsky Crumb admit to. The stuff that I've heard admitted to, and I'm like, how has this guy not been Weinsteined yet? I don't know what protections he has, but
Fizz. Well, I just got trolled. Joshua Hughes says Tail drinks bleach in the final chapter, and I said, "For real? No."
So, Marm, you say that about I'm going to totally like argue with you in chat.
All right.
So the story I know is that his wife was taking pictures of other women's butts, admitted to this so that she could give it to R. Crumb for his own usage. Okay. So I know for a fact he's not just putting all the thoughts into his art.
All right,
that's like he's a coomer, and like I think it's funny that like he tried to hide behind that excuse. I'm just getting it all out on paper, and it's like, yeah, sure,
yeah, you never get anything out on paper. That's like, you know, you feed your brain with what you work, and that's why like living an artist's life is such a dangerous thing, because you're constantly getting into the well of your own brokenness, and there's a reason so many authors drink themselves to death or find other ways of ending themselves quickly.
Yeah, Linda Berry once told me, don't make depression comics because you're going to make one depression comic to vent your depression, and then you're going to end up making 100 depression comics and just being more depressed.
Yep.
Right, exactly.
Those of us who feel the compulsion to you know plumb the depths of the human psyche, we should not encourage.
Wait, actually, hold on. Didn't Lindy Berry make a depression comic?
She did. That's why she told me that.
Okay, right. okay. So
she was speaking from experience.
It was from experience. Okay, all right. Because for a hot second, I was like, wait a minute.
Wait a second.
The don't monster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, but my read on R. Crumb was that he was trying to like essentially like cope with the darkness that wouldn't go away and was trying to like excuse some of it. Maybe he was trying to exorcise some of it, but like, yeah,
he's definitely a degenerate. But you know, he's the kind of degenerate who says, you know, when I was a child, I was sexually attracted to Bugs Bunny. Right? It's like, okay, he's honest. He's a degenerate, but he's honest.
Yes, that's true. Lord have mercy. I prefer, out of that whole scene, I prefer Picard. I prefer Picard's honesty.
I think Picard was a friggin' genius. I will never. After I never understood the point of American Splendor when people described it to me, and I had to read it for a class, and it just changed the entire way I think about comics. I'm just that guy could make the most boring, mundane, everyday stuff read like a hero's tale. I don't know how he did it.
You know what's interesting?
Dude would write comics about shopping for jazz records, and I would just be like, ooh. I don't even know how he pulled it off. It's amazing.
So bring it back to Tales Gets Trolled. There is, I think, there is that influence, comics with an X. It's here, but I don't necessarily think here's what I think is interesting. I don't think Laserbot is like, oh, I read a bunch of Art Crumb and that's what influenced me. Mm-hmm. I think he's accessing the same well.
Right. That's what I agree. I agree. And I think that's the thing. Same thing when I was really vibing on on Jim's observation about the Golden Age stuff. I think that's the same kind of thing. I think that there is there's like a zeitgeist in the way that Laserbot is using the comics art form that feels similar to Comics with an X and feels similar to some of the rougher Golden Age stuff, but I don't believe was informed by either one of those things. Right? It's like I said, it's like a zeitgeist. It's like a spirit that is in there.
I guess I could see a little Fletcher Hanks in here.
Yeah, that's the exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. That Phantoma and
Stardust, the Super Wizard.
Yeah. Or even what is it? I can't think of it at the minute. There are some other of this Golden Age guys that are just gonzo with some of the stuff they came up with. That just doesn't even seem like it belongs on the page. And I can't think of any at the minute. I'm blanking because I wasn't prepared. I didn't do my research like a good little student. Because I'm not a student. I graduated with a bachelor's degree. Like it matters. Okay. So this is as far as I have gotten in the story. So I don't want to get spoiled because I will feel the need to continue reading this at some point.
Everybody troll Reese by spoiling it in the chat.
That's happened.
Okay.
Well, or spoil me with
Reese
the
gets
Joshua Hughes thing and spoil me with fake things.
Reese gets trolled.
Well, I'm going to put a link to one of the pages my buddy made, so just Reese don't click on it. Everybody else though, go look at the art.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That'll be the ticket.
The strange network of the Mattriarchy continues to expand ever outward.
Yeah, that is some trippy stuff. I believe when we were first talking about this stream, Metal was considering trying to reach out to the fellow and have him come on to talk about the whole business. But we weren't able to coordinate things, and then Metal's connection has been somewhat untrustworthy.
No, that was one of my other connections.
That was a different
This
fellow.
one
Okay.
hasn't. And I would mostly, honestly, I probably could have reached out to Laserbot. Anyway, it seems pretty open. He hopped on the what's it called, the Newgrounds Festival. So I don't know. I just things have been busy on my end too, so I haven't.
Oh, yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
And we, like I said, like I was telling Amarm when we first started the shows, we had first talked about this like 2.5 years ago, and now we're finally doing it today.
Mhm.
So it's just one of those things that's taken forever.
So I think we lost Cartoonicus after chapter 1. We
Yes.
left that off at the end of chapter 5. I'm up to chapter 10. Nanji says, honestly, the story is so crazy. There's no way to know if someone is.
That is
spoiling it
true.
or trolling.
We could say exactly what happens, and it just sounds like we're talking on our butt. So it really doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fact. That's fact.
That's true. Yeah.
So I should go back to the description section and mention that this is definitely an 18 and up stream, just for the language, if nothing else. Because I don't know that I've ever read a comic that is as hard an R on language as this comic.
You know what's funny? Because it's I guess it is and it isn't, I think, because it's I guess for someone who's millennial and just grew up reading a bunch of 4chan, you know what I mean? Like there's just a certain point where you're just like, oh, this is just like, the Green Post's level of writing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's pretty accurate. That's pretty accurate.
But that means that again, that's another assumption that, like, if you're not initiated into that world, and I'm not necessarily advocating anyone go do that, it is a shock to a lot of people, you know what I mean? When people first discover, people say what on the internet? People have what register of language?
Right.
Though he also the Laserbot also seems to have an awareness about his swearing. The death words are just the top tier swear words. They're the swear words you definitely get your mouth washed out with soap for using. And in the universe, uttering them can kill someone.
Right, yeah. The N word is like the ultimate like death explosion.
Power words.
Yeah, exactly.
Thunder words. Then we're pulling in a whole other concept on that. So that's crazy. And like I said, it doesn't read to me.
It also regionalizes the book, because if you're from the deep south, that's not as much of a power word as you think.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Well, and it's but here's part of the thing that's so fascinating. Like I said, is it really does touch on a lot of these there are literary ideas, there are cultural ideas, there are these touchstone elements. It's definitely well informed pop culturally, but it doesn't read literate, like highly literate, but it still plays in a lot of the same spaces. It's weird, man. It's a weird book.
That's what I'm saying. The idiot savant comes in, where it's like person
can't-
not formally trained who's still like accessing things that people who have training do. So it's like it speaks to that inner muse as Marm
the
was
shaman
saying.
theory of a storyteller. Like the shaman, there are non-literate societies that have an entire storytelling culture.
Yep. Well, yeah, I mean that's well established. There's the Awen, right? The idea of the Welsh bards were inspired by something transcendent to tell stories and to memorize and to practice and to perform, right?
This is a street poet. Yeah, street poet, basically.
Yeah. So, even you get onto street poetry and talking about that and looking at like the way beat poetry functions, like Kerouac stuff specifically, playing with phrasing and with words. Like I was talking about earlier, how one of the things that is a learning curve in reading Tales Gets Trolled is the horrible lettering, right? And spelling and stuff like that too. But once you find the groove, it just flows, which is the weirdest thing because it defies conventions of everything. And so that speaks to once again that sort of musal aspect of it all. So
it's a read aloud comic, because if you read it aloud, you start hearing the words he's intending to write. One of my favorite villains threw me for a loop because he used the word villains instead of violence. There is no need for villains.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's wild. Yeah, Isaac pokes out a really hilarious commentary. This show has range. One week we talked to Doug about how his work leads people to their faith, and to hard R-rated Tales Gets Trolled. Yep, that's a fact. We're here to experience the breadth of the comic world, and to discuss how it does or doesn't affect us. And sometimes it's just about making one of the regulars really uncomfortable. Sometimes that's the point of the show. It's to make Cartoonicus freak out. That's the
Between that and the social media comics that we read.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how many of the regulars is it even possible to make uncomfortable? It's a very small choice, a group of people. So
no, yeah, that's a usually it's me or Cartoonicus. I think we're probably the two most susceptible to our own sensitivities. But I tell you what, I would not put together a 2-minute montage of people screaming to various musical strands. That thing was a work of art.
Metal is sharing his Newgrounds game.
Oh yeah, gotta pimp my stuff out there, you know.
Absolutely.
It's a fun game. It's a dating sim technically, so
it's a dating sim.
Yeah, it's a dating sim where you're at a interdimensional academy and you can date a demiurge or a vampire nurse or a artistically rendered sphere. There's a lot of good options there.
Oh my god!
I guess it is kind of like connecting back to Tales Gets Trolled and Newgrounds and DeviantArt. There is kind of like a weird overlap between like the horrendously R-rated and maybe the wholesome. Like I think 4chan put out a game where the meme is that it's an anime dating sim with like disabled anime girls, but then like the writing is on point that even like kind of like SJW, disabled activists ended up kind of like resonating with it because they actually took the time to like treat the characters as legitimate, right?
So, Katawa Shoujo is a really good game.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, see, and that comes back to the my commentary earlier about punk rock and how it in a lot of ways through the Ramones still has a lot of punk has a very wholesome core to it, because through contrast it is directioned to at least some of the transcendence. Ugliness doesn't exist and for its own sake. Ugliness exists to point to the fact that it's ugly, and that means it's pointing. It necessitates riffing off of the true and the beautiful to exist. And so by subversion actually reinforces the transcendental. And not every punk rock group or band does that, but there are some that do that really, really well. Whether they're trying to or not, that's not what I'm getting at. It's just a function of their place and their exposure and their inspiration in some ways. And I think that there is some gutter art does that very same thing. And some of it doesn't. Some of it, of course, is just exploitative for its own sake, right? I'm not trying to like paint everything into one box or not.
Not gutter art, but Josh Howard, who's a very competent artist. I think he kind of like leans into some of that in like Dead at 17, where it's a very metal graphic zombie book, and then Christ appears as like a seminal juncture of the book, right? So there is like a, I don't know, like metalhead, bikers for Jesus subculture that where I see this crop up a lot.
Yeah, no, I think definitely there's some aspect of that. I mean, there's a horror punk band called Grave Robber that is they're explicitly and implicitly a Christian band, where a lot of their lyrics are they play on horror themes, but they're actually talking about aspects of dang, my words aren't working today. Christian doctrine and stuff. Like they've got, I can't remember the name of the song right now, but they've got one that like it sounds like it's about a zombie, like retelling the story of White Zombie, the horror film, but it's actually about the Eucharist. So, but yeah, so I think that there are definitely there are elements of those aspects in it. Doug says, I mean not Doug, Brett McGowan. Ugliness doesn't exist for its own sake. Don't tell that to G.G. Allen. That dude was a degenerate. Yeah, that's a whole thing. But yeah. So, Twitlis said he had to step away for a moment. I think we've almost said everything. That I think there is to say right now, and it is almost 9. So
yeah, I feel satisfied. But my closing thoughts are: read it if you can handle a hard R comic, and if you can handle a hard R comic, you're never gonna forget it. And it is a pretty inspiring. Whatever else may be true, it is a pretty inspiring example of what you can achieve if you keep at it, even if you may start at kind of like outsider art. This is completely outside of the world of polished art or the world of competent illustration, and yet it somehow works.
Yep. And I would agree that the other thing I want to point out too about the popularity aspect of Tales Gets Trolled, right? Despite the artistic limitations, it is still something that aspires to, whether it intends to or not, it does aspire to and meet that qualification of art, of something that is pointing to the universals, that has an aspect of the true, the good, the beautiful in it, despite its limitations. And once again, I don't know where it goes after that, but there are some implicit elements of those within the first 5 chapters, even though it is very dark and very graphic. The other thing about it that I want to say is that I get so tired of people out there saying, "Oh, I would make art if this," or "I would make art if that." If it wasn't for this, I would have my great story out there, and like you don't have an excuse, guys. You don't have an excuse to not get out there and make something, even if it's not the greatest, even if no one appreciates it. The fact that people like Laserbot, the fact that people like One have been able to make meaningful art that has connected with people with their limited skills, with their own time constraints. Laserbot was homeless for a while. He was still out there making comics. There, you do not have an excuse. In fact, I would say you do not have an excuse to not make art. In fact, I would argue that you probably have a duty to yourself and to your community to make art in one shape or another. It doesn't have to be comics, but you should be out there shooting for it. So that's my take on it. Oh, hey, also this Sunday, total side note, new page for a new strip for Grab It will drop on Global Comics on Sunday. So there you have it. And for the public on Patreon as well. So if you follow our Patreon, you can read the next new Grab It story or strip. It's a little strip, but yeah. Because I'm not just talking about art. I make art. Well, in this case, my kid made it. I just colored it. But
Everyone, show your comic here. I write and draw Jane Smith wannabe gladiator.
yeah, and that's excellent.
Grazie. Metal,
Yeah.
shill X Dynamis Chaos.
Oh yeah, I'm putting a link to the website in the chat, which I haven't updated in forever. I have like a page half inked for X Dynamis Chaos. The problem has just been the living situation I'm in is less of time, but more of space. Like I just don't have a really good space for working on art. I managed to squeeze out my Lunar New Year piece that I do every year, but I think we're relocating at the end of this upcoming month, so things should probably speed back up again once we're there. But
the way I describe it is like I have seasons where it's like I can't get into the studio, but then in those times I prepare to get back into the studio so that when I'm in the studio, then all the roadblocks are out of my way. Yeah.
Well, I've still been trying to be productive. I've been writing, especially because like web noveling and just noveling in general is something I've been doing. I don't say before comics, but before I started publishing comics publicly, I was publishing novels and prose and stuff like that. But also I'm writing a script. I'm working with an artist on the Dreamscape Dilemma, which is going to be a premium comic that you will have to purchase if you want to read. Or actually, I'd give a copy out to anybody on the panel here for free, just for review purposes. I don't care. But anybody else watching, they would have to pay to read it. And that should be coming along sometime this season. And I don't know the progress. I've gotten at least a finished page back, so we're making progress.
Also, I would like to go ahead and point out, since he's not here, you can read Super Schooled, which is written by Twitless and drawn by Cartoonicus. And they each have, just in case. Oh, are you back, Twitless?
For a second, yeah, I gotta bounce here in a minute.
Okay, well, we're just saying our goodbyes.
Okay.
But yeah, I was just saying that you Super Schooled, you and Cartoonicus work on together.
Yep.
And I believe on that website, they also, I'm not sure how you'd find it, but in the comments section, I've seen scrolls to your other projects as well that are that are somewhat easy to find. So
check out Adventures of Omega Girl. I just finished a 4-issue arc, or at least the script for it, and so I will have more stories coming out soon. Just have to get some editing on that.
And those can be purchased on Indie Planet.
Indie Planet, yep.
Indie Planet.
And I'll pop a link in chat real fast.
Sweet.
You can also get physical copies of any of my finished comics on Indie Planet as well.
Yep. Great website.
Yep. So yeah. Get out there. No excuses. Go make art. That's the story. Okay, we're gonna wrap it there. Next week, I believe, is Wonder Woman. I think, but I'm not sure. I have to look at it.
Speaking of comics with weird fetish stuff in them.
Well, we're looking specifically at Tom King's Wonder Woman 8 and 10 is what we'll be looking at. If I remember everything correctly, I think that's next week.
Speaking of comics with weird fetishes in them.
Yeah. It's not Wonder Woman generally, though. We're not going back into the golden age. We're just talking about
just Tom King's
mommy issues.
Yeah.
Okay, later, everybody. Until next time, get out there and read some comics, and we'll catch you next time on the old internets. Bye.